You won't believe what just happened. Republican candidate Vivek Ramaswamy just exposed the deep state by calling out BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street as the most powerful cartel in human history that run the United States behind closed curtains. State Street alone has like $3.7 trillion under management and $40 trillion under custody. Can you imagine those numbers? But the most powerful of them all is BlackRock, that controls over $9 trillion. The CEO of BlackRock isn't just the most influential person on Wall Street that literally calls the shots, but he has so much influence over who becomes the next president of the United States. It's almost impossible to become a US president without his approval. Growing up in a Jewish family in California, Larry Fink early on understood the importance of money and how the global financial system works. So he went on and worked for various banks before co-founding BlackRock, that went on to become the most powerful bank in the world. It's the largest asset manager on the entire planet. But what is interesting here is that he's not the only Jewish CEO out there. If you take a look at the second largest asset manager in the world, State Street, he's also a Jewish billionaire. While researching for this video, I was shocked by the number of Jewish people who occupy key financial positions in the financial industry. I mean, just take a look at the largest banks in the country, such as Goldman Sachs or Wells Fargo. You will find out that the CEO of most of these banks have Jewish roots. Now, I want to make something clear. I don't really care what you think about the Jews, and I don't want to spread hate or anti-Semitism with this video, but to answer a very simple and basic question: why do we have so many Jewish billionaires? What exactly are they doing differently? Is there something that they know that the rest of us don't? Just take a look at the Fed. This is the most powerful financial institution in the country. This is the bank that has most of the influence over the US economy. And remember that the global economy depends on the United States. So the Fed has power literally over the global economy. And what is interesting here is that the chairman of the Fed is almost always a Jew. As far as I know, Jay Powell is an exception because he does not have Jewish roots. But if you take a look at his predecessor, Janet Yellen, she has Jewish roots. And she's not alone. The predecessor of Janet Yellen, Ben Bernanke, he was literally one of the most powerful people of his time. He led the Fed during one of the worst periods ever, during the housing crash. And guess what? He has Jewish parents. His predecessor, Alan Greenspan, this guy is a legendary chairman of the Fed that led the Federal Reserve for 18 years. And he is a Jew. And the people who were before him were also Jews. But it doesn't stop there, it goes way beyond that. After strengthening their grip over the Fed, they usually move to the Treasury. Janet Yellen, she was the chairman of the Fed during the Trump presidency. Then she became the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States. Guess who was the Secretary of the Treasury during the Trump presidency? Steven Mnuchin. And guess what? He's a former Goldman Sachs banker, and he's also a Jew. And if you think that Obama was different, then you're mistaken, my friend, because the two Secretary of the Treasury during the Obama's presidency were also a Jew. I can go on and give you many more examples. And it's not just about the government. Just take a look at what's happening in the private investment firms. It's also dominated by the Jewish community, starting with Bill Ackman, the guy who started the Pershing Square Capital with $54 million and turned it into an $18 billion hedge fund. You don't have to go far. Just take a look at the richest hedge fund managers of the United States, and you will find names such as Carl Icahn or Jim Simons who have Jewish roots. And guess what? They're not just the richest hedge fund managers in the United States, but literally across the globe. The Jewish influence over the US financial system is way deeper than most of you imagine. So let's try to answer a very simple question. Why such a small minority, the people who represent less than 3% of the US population, have such a large number of Jewish billionaires? Why do they occupy most of the key financial positions in the country? So, if you're ready, give this video a thumbs up and let's dive in. After the French Revolution, the young general Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power. France was a monarchy for centuries, and it was time to turn France into a republic. That's why France needed a new constitution that will guarantee the rights and the freedom of every single citizen. That was Napoleon's plan. Of course, he later on went on to declare himself as an emperor, but that's a different story. And since Jews lived in France for centuries, one of the questions that he wanted to address is that how he's going to integrate Jews into the French society. Our Jews are also as humans as everyone else. Should they be treated exactly the same way? Should they be given the exact same rights as every other French citizen? He even had a plan to let the Jews marry non-Jewish people and slowly disappear over the next century. I'm not here trying to criticize Napoleon because he gave Jews more rights than any other European country. But I want you to understand to what extent anti-Semitism was popular back then across Europe. They were forced to live in ghettos. They were prohibited to do certain professions. There were specific laws that prohibited Jews to own land. They were literally second-class citizens. In fact, they had so little rights across Europe that it was really difficult to be a Jew back then. That's one of the reasons why Jews always immigrated from one place to another, from one country to another. They did not feel attached to any country because the ruler could change and that could be the end of the Jews in that country. So often immigration for Jews was a matter of survival. That's one of the reasons why Jews immigrated to the United Kingdom when the Industrial Revolution took over, especially the United States, because unlike Europe, in the United States people were much more free. They could come in and achieve the American dream. It was the dream for the Jews to immigrate to the United States. That's why even today, after Israel, United States has the largest Jewish population. And since they were oppressed for thousands of years across Europe and literally across the world, they had to rely on themselves. They had to build strong communities. When there are specific laws that prevent you from having a certain job, there is something we have to do. You have to rely on yourself. You have to start something on your own to somehow put food on the table. Otherwise, you're not going to survive. That entrepreneurial spirit stayed with the Jews until today. That's one of the reasons why we have so many successful Jewish entrepreneurs who built some of the largest companies in the country. Here is something else that Jews understood over the centuries. If their voice isn't heard in the highest ranks of the government, it could be the end of the Jews, just like it happened in 1940s in Europe when Hitler rose to power. It was really dangerous to be a Jew back then. That's why these people hid their identity, adopted different names in order not to appear like a Jew. Take an example of the Rothschild family. This is one of the wealthiest families in the history. They built the first ever international bank. They were so wealthy that there's so many conspiracies about them that their net worth could be like trillions of dollars. And yet they lost everything. They had to trade their entire net worth in 1940s in order not to be persecuted by the Nazis. For thousands of years, Jews understood the importance of having a strong community, because when you don't have the exact same rights as everyone else in the country, your only chance of survival is to rely on your community, because individually, you're going to die. And that's one of the reasons why an average Jew often was much wealthier than the average European. That's another reason why they were hated by other communities across Europe. And you can see that even today. Just take a look at the United States. Jews have the strongest lobbies in the country because Jewish billionaires are ready to donate as much as it's required in order to be heard in the government. So we have people such as Henry Kissinger, who was literally the mastermind behind Nixon's administration. This guy was one of the most powerful people in the world back then. Even the current Secretary of the State is a Jew, Antony Blinken. But that was not the only factor that made these people so rich. If you take a look at the history of Jews, they were known historically as moneylenders. That's not because they are genetically built differently to understand money better, but if you take a look at Europe, historically throughout history, Christianity was against lending money with interest. And what is the point of lending your money to someone else if you're not going to earn anything? I mean, have you ever lent money to your family members or relatives or friends? They rarely pay you back. But that was not prohibited under the Jewish law, so it was one of the few professions that Jews were allowed to practice. That's why over the centuries, they mastered the rules of money and they passed that knowledge to their kids and their grandchildren. What truly created the modern capitalism was the creation of the stock market in the 16th century. You see, shipping is the most cost-efficient way to trade, and it was throughout the entire history and even today. But the problem is that it's also the riskiest, because your ship could be attacked by a pirate, for example, or it could be just sank deep into the ocean. So, if you're a businessman, for example, and you spent your entire wealth in order to send the ship and it sank deep into the ocean, or it's literally just attacked by a group of pirates, you could lose your entire wealth. However, what if multiple merchants sponsored one ship? What if multiple merchants invested in a single ship? So if it's hypothetically attacked by a pirate, for example, yes, they're gonna lose some money, but that's better than losing your entire wealth on a single ship. And that's how the stock market was born, because everyone saw an opportunity to invest in one of those ships. Especially back then, it was the peak of European colonialism. Financing ships was literally one of the best businesses back then. And with the rise of the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century in the United Kingdom, the stock market became even more popular. But because Jews were in this industry way before everyone else, they had an upper hand. They had a better understanding of money. They had a better understanding of how the financial system works. In fact, they became the pioneer who created the modern global financial system. They became the first people who opened the first international bank. But that was not the case with the rest of the population, because for some reason, even today, we're still not taught financial education in schools or universities. We're not taught how taxation works. We're not taught how money works, how to invest, how the stock market works. But it's not a surprise, because the initial point of the modern school system was to create a generation of obedient workers who are going to work 9 to 5 in factories. That was not the case in the Jewish households. I mean, teaching about money, financially educating your kids was literally a household practice in any Jewish family. This was the knowledge that was sacred among the elites and the Jewish community for centuries. However, that's not the case anymore, because we have something called the internet. That's why we launched the Intelligent Investing Academy, to make this knowledge accessible to everyone else, so that everyone can come in and learn the art of investing, understand how the stock market works. I mean, like it or not, the only way to financial freedom is to learn how your money works for you. And the best way to invest, and it has been the case for centuries as we have seen, is to invest in the stock market. So in the Intelligent Investing Academy, we teach you how the stock market works, how to read and analyze financial statements, how to find stocks that are going to grow in value, what kind of stocks you have to always avoid, what kind of mistakes you have to avoid, how you build a portfolio that's gonna get you to financial freedom. And these are just some of the things that we teach you in the Intelligent Investing Academy. The link will be in the description. Capitalism is the reason why we have so many billionaires today. You know, the people who own yachts and private jets are living a far better life than queens and kings did for the entire of human history. They couldn't even dream the kind of lifestyle that these people can afford today. Of course, everyone benefited from free trade and capitalism, but not everyone got as rich as the top 1%. Americans were asked how they think that wealth is distributed in the United States. And this was their answer. The top 10% are significantly living a better life, they're making most of the money, they hold most of the wealth, and the bottom 20% are barely paying their bills. And the vast majority of Americans are somewhere in the middle class who are doing fine. I mean, I would answer the question the exact same way probably, but I was shocked when I took a look at the numbers. When I found out that the top 10% are significantly poorer than the top 1%. I mean, can you believe the fact that the top 1% of the US population literally owns almost 40% of the entire wealth of the country? The bottom 40% of the country are barely paying their bills. They're literally just surviving, you can say. And the rest of the people are in the middle class who are living paycheck to paycheck. And that's not the case just with the United States. Just take a look at any country, Europe, Russia, China, whatever. So it's not a coincidence that people hate and despise rich people. And I'm not saying that you should love rich people and they're rich because they just work hard. Certainly, luck played a role in their success. Yes, they didn't always do the morally right thing to get where they are. But regardless of how these people got to the top, the difference between the Jewish community and the rest of the people is that they always admire rich people and try to get there instead of despising them. One of the things that Jews are known across the world is for saving money, even when they make a lot of money. Because living a luxury life is just one of the perks of becoming wealthy. The whole purpose is to save money and invest it and grow your capital. That's the only way to get to the top. So instead of hating the top 1%, the Jewish community encourages their people in order to get to the top. That's why if you take a look at the Forbes 400, you will find out that almost 25% of them are Jews, and yet they make up less than 3% of the US population. I think everyone can learn a thing or two from Jews when it comes to money, when it comes to investing, when it comes to building financial systems, because they have been in this industry for so long that they probably mastered it better than everyone else. If you have enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.